Dandelion was fighting. The alcohol he had drunk was still pulsating in his veins, dulling his senses. Throbbing pain reverberated deep inside his skull. His heavy breathing marked the rhythm of his torment. The bard cursed under his breath. His nausea only agreed to relent once the vodka had been forcefully purged. Despite his best efforts, the sheep became victims of this cleansing. So he cursed once more whilst panting heavily until finally making a hesitant step from his bed. Then another despite his feet dancing strangely on the floor with questionable stability. The thirst grabbed him by the throat. He scrambled for a drink of water whilst attempting to recall the previous evening. The spring festival, an age-long tradition stolen from the elves, attracted many to the small city of Gullet. It was a pompous celebration with copious amounts of booze and food, and yet it lacked refined entertainment. Until the local mayor decided to pay a young poet for his renowned talents. Not enough, thought Dandelion, licking the taste of droplets of water from the jug's edge. Definitely not enough. The mayor's daughter flinched in disgust at the sight of this monstrous mess. She still entered further into the chamber in which her father housed their guest. She stopped after reaching the bed and cast a meaningful look at Dandelion. He was accustomed to others looking down their nose at him, witnessing such a trifle. This, however, did not deter him from unleashing a rather charming smile. In fact, it would be hard to find a smile more disarming than Dandelion's. But the mayor's daughter sighed with resignation. Furthermore, she surprised him with her frigidity as she cut straight to the matter of his performance at the spring festival. She proclaimed that there must be no shortage of poetry and singing, and that his young, unquestionable, in her opinion, talent would be no excuse for failing to provide. Dandelion glanced at her disappointing bosom, about which he had already started composing a spiteful ballad. He grinned once more. After reaching the market square, Dandelion made his way directly to the stage prepared for his spectacle. In order to make up for his tardiness, he began stringing his lute, commencing his concert unconventionally. He slid past a stocky tradeswoman who, despite his brilliance, didn't even bother to give him a second look. One could not say that about the restless crowd forming by the stage. Excited whispering began as people stepped aside. Even a white-haired fellow, which the learned bard quickly identified as a witcher, respectively made room for him. The inhabitants of Gullet seemed capable of recognizing a virtuoso even before hearing him. Splendid! Dandelion took a deep bow, sweeping the cobblestones with the hair and feather of his hat. Then he fulfilled the silent wish of the crowd. He swiped his fingers nimbly across the strings of his lute. Both his steps and his melody were mesmerizing all in attendance. Yet it was clearly his majestic voice that finally won the hearts of his audience. By its conclusion, he saw that he managed to achieve the seemingly impossible. There stood an unfeeling witcher with a tear in his eye, clearly moved by his poetry. One had to admit that music stimulates the senses. The bard was good with rhymes, knew how to sing and how to navigate feminine shapes. Ergo, he must be the highly desirable type. Oh, how the wenches eagerly displayed their assets to him, creating a heated atmosphere that even vodka couldn't quench. While Dandelion did not partake in the festivities, he stayed nearby to accompany one of the more eager-looking female inhabitants, Gullet. He soon felt pleasure, one that he longed for since the morning. Suddenly he heard an angry roar, sending all his prospects of pleasure straight back to hell. The bard was lying under both the stage and the wench, with his sword out. Finally he managed to sheath the blade before the armed assailants entered his hideout, and when they rushed at him, Dandelion did not fall back, successfully defending his lady. Nonetheless, he pretended to be a weakling, so the scoundrels would lower their guard, allowing him to strike at an opportune time. A familiar-looking witcher quickly joined, clearly intent on rescuing his favorite performer. Two fearless heroes against some common no-good thugs. Dandelion liked those odds. Once the situation was under control, Dandelion kissed the rescued maiden goodbye and walked casually away into the celebrating crowd. He did not say farewell to the witcher, as men have no need for words in such situations. But after a while the bard noticed that he was being followed and turned nonchalantly, stretching out his hand to the men behind him. Witcher awkwardly returned the gesture, grabbing his sleeve instead of his palm. Dazed by his brilliance, he barely managed to speak comprehensively, yet it was clear that he wished to converse. It was only after a while that he regained his composure in order to introduce himself as Geralt of Rivia. And what he failed to say aloud, even though it was painfully obvious, was that he needed company. A witcher's work had to be oh so lonely, with his horse likely his only stable companion. So, Dandelion suggested moving to a quieter place, a well-renowned bordello with a great kitchen. For appearances, of course, he used some irrelevant excuse to go there, but in truth it was just an act of benevolence. So they set off together, the bard and the witcher. Upon reaching the door of the Little Flower, Dandelion came to the conclusion that his assailants must have been sent by some jealous competitor. He dug deep within his memory and recalled a man from Sidaris who had clearly envied his talent. That coward and talentless piece of shit. He would have been such a wretched dickwad to send hired thugs to kill the more capable poet. Dandelion simply could not allow in good conscience such an affront to remain unanswered. He had the urge to immediately depart in order to seek justice. However, revenge had to wait, since the bard had a witcher to entertain. Geralt, oblivious to his rudeness, seemed enthralled by the amply bosomed owner. Dandelion wondered when the mutant had last enjoyed, but decided not to follow that thread of thought any deeper. Determined to make the best of the situation, he ordered from a lonely serving maiden a few local delicacies this establishment was famous for. The bard spared no expense on his new friend by procuring a sizable quantity of the finest vodka. In return, he only hoped that the witcher would open up and talk more. He did not. With time, however, the bard had to admit that Geralt could be quite an amusing companion, especially after having knocked back a few shots. Dandelion even managed to get his real name out of him, which was Geralt Roger Eric Duhat Belgard. Exactly that. Geralt Roger Eric Duhalt Belgard.